In the last lecture, we added a functionality so that we can remove list items. That's nice, but in a typical use case, we probably also want to store an array of to-dos in JavaScript, so that we don't just change the DOM and add and remove items, but that we also have an array with all our to-dos, because probably we want to do something with our to-dos in JavaScript. So a typical use case would be to have a to-dos array in JavaScript, which is empty initially. And whenever we add a new to-do here, after we checked if the user entered something valid, well, in this case, I could create a new to-do here, give it any name you like, of course. And that could be a JavaScript object where we have the value the user entered, so user input here, but maybe also some unique ID, so that we have something to identify the to-do by. So we might have ID property, and now I will use math random, and this is not truly a unique ID, I am aware of this. This is just a random number, and the chance is high that it will differ from the last one, but it is not necessarily unique. It'll do for now here though. So that is our new to-do. We can now push this new to-do on our list of to-dos, on our array of to-dos. The issue we now have is, if we remove a to-do, it's easy to remove the element, the list item, but how do we find out which ID this list item had? We don't store this information in the DOM, but the DOM is the only thing we access here. We just get the element we want to remove. So we need to store the ID in the DOM here too. That would be one possible way. So what I can do is, before appending this to-do list item, I will reach out to it and use the dataset property to use this data attribute we can populate with our own data, with our own custom attribute, so to say. And then there I want to store ID, set my ID data property, or attribute I should say, and set it equal to new to-do ID, so to the ID we generated here. Now this gets stored in the DOM, and I can show you this if we reload this and say buy milk, and then select this create element. It does have this data ID attribute here now. Now we can use that here in the remove to do code before we actually remove it to get the item ID by accessing the clicked li and then dataset ID. So just where we stored it here. Now with that ID fetched, we can now loop through all the to-dos in our to-dos array. So let's start at the first element with index 0. Let's loop as long as we are, well, within the scope, within the length of this to-dos array. And let's increment I after each iteration. And then we can simply check if to-dos ID, keep in mind the elements in to-dos are just elements of this type here, objects of this type, so we will have ID property. If the ID is equal to the item ID. If this is the case, then I want to call splice on to-dos to basically remove an element, and I then want to start splicing at the position I and splice one element. And thereafter, I will call break to exit out of my loop here. So now to see if that works, let's console log our to-dos array at the end of add to-do and at the end of remove to-do here. And if we now hit Control Enter and open up the console to see if we got any errors, if I add buy milk and answer questions, you see we seem to be adding objects to that array. That looks good. If I now click on buy milk, only one object is left, and that is actually answer questions, and now the array is empty. So that is working, and that is the finished JavaScript code for now. That's the finished application with a lot of code already. So let's analyze this and find out how we could improve it.